Welcome to the Possibility Paradigm Podcast, where we have conversations that are at the intersection of possibility, consciousness, actual experience, and energetic intelligence. The Possibility Paradigm are actually more than conversations. They're experiences that can change your tomorrows. Let's jump into today's episode. Hi, and welcome to today's episode of the Possibility Paradigm Podcast. I'm Grace Ambrook, and today I'm posing the question, what's the possibility of filling in the gap between intuition and strategy? And we're going to open up this space, crack open some possibilities, do some reframes, and have you in a dynamic collaboration with both of these ways of being to create greater in your business and in your life, equally applicable. Business is kind of just a reflection of life, honed in and terribly, terribly focused, or wonderfully, wonderfully focused, I should say. So, when we do these either ors, when it's either intuition or strategy, am I going to follow my intuition or am I going to follow my strategy? And so immediately we're in separation. We're not in what if we actually brought those two things together? What if we had intuitive strategy and what if we had strategic intuition? Now, strategic intuition is a little bit of a misnomer, but I'm placing it there so that we can play in this field and you can really receive a shift that will have you actually creating offers and opportunities and products and services that work for you, right? Because while you're splitting the energy between I better follow the strategy that everybody's telling me I should follow and intuitively what you're receiving, and you have not activated up the capacity to bring the two together to create more than you can possibly imagine, well, that's missing out, right, on the truth of who you are and the fullest of the possibilities on the planet. So as a preface, and one of the questions that I ask myself all the time is, am I creating this or am I doing this from an overflow, from a more than enough consciousness, or am I doing it from a reactive survival consciousness? Where am I coming from rather than what happens, I know a lot with intuitive beings, is we get the hit and then we look at the external and then we modify the internal to fit what our perception of the external is. And that is exhausting, for one thing. And so when I just want to point out some of the common patterns, and one of them is in relationship to strategy. Strategy has a lot, if on its own, uncalibrated to more than enough and overflow. Uncalibrated strategy mostly sits in survival energy, and strategy mostly is formulated from external expectations or external perceptions. When the strategy is on its own, that's kind of a lot of the time where it's coming from. When it's calibrated with coming from overflow and more than enough consciousness, then the strategy actually energetically becomes contribution, not survival, to keep you safe, secure in any of the many ways, financially, professionally, blah, blah, blah. So as we begin to go, okay, let's have an intuitive strategy, right? If strategy just on its own is mostly based in survival and in external conditions. Strategy and intuition dancing together beautifully is like, oh, wow, this is a massive contribution. What is this actually creating and generating? And it's from the inside out. And I pretty sure that anybody listening to this quality podcast knows about the inside out reality. And so what happens when we just, if the intuition and the strategy are not calibrated, we do a lot of, we get caught up into more of this reactive consciousness, reacting to the externals. And then we do, what are the have tos for this to manifest? What do I have to do? So we go into this have to energy, which is a survival energy, not a contribution energy, and certainly not an overflow energy or more than enough energy. And so the, and then when we get caught up, and this is all in the matrix, right? And then when we get caught up in that external how-tos, how do we get this to manifest? That's a different way of being as you are creating and marketing and delivering, right? It's a very exhausting from my personal experience and from people that I have mentored when they're in that. That's quite often the space that people are in before they begin to work with me. Because when we can activate up that internal energy around what if you allowed for greater? What does it take for you to allow greater by the creation of this product or service, whatever it is that you're creating? So, when you're doing either or, you're staying in external or internal. We want to bring them all together. And the key for that is if you're allowing for greater, what can this new creation actually be? And when you're in straight strategy stroke survival mode, it's like, how do I make this work? Very different creative energy to come from. So one of the things I always like to play around with is, what other psychic energies are in the field to be aware of so that you can ensure you stay in here and not, and for those, sorry, podcast listeners, in here meaning in your center, because I'm recording this as a video. You can watch these on YouTube. And so subscribe in either place, please, because that will help to get this message further and further out into the field. So if you want to be part of that ripple of the possibility paradigm, then by all means, subscribe. I would love that. But one of the psychic or energetic things to be super aware of is being distracted, right? So, and ain't that easy, right? It's increasingly easy to become distracted because there are more golden, what do they call it, little sparks flying around everywhere you look. Of course, the socials, but in other places as well. And so, and there's if you're in what I'm saying is a distraction. It doesn't mean that you don't enjoy those things. You don't enjoy maybe going onto the socials, etc. But you do it from your choice, not from, oh, I better check to see what's going on. You're doing it, you have some discipline around it that allows you to maintain in the driver's seat of your interaction. Because when you get distracted energetically, it's very, very easy to get caught up in a superficiality of your goals and intentions. So as we dissolve this gap between intuition and strategy and bring them together, that is such a rich resource. Like if you put your attention and focus into that space, you're not being distracted, but there will be a lot of entertainment in there when you're doing it fully and completely. And a lot of entertainment in there. No need to get distracted by these superficial things. trying to keep you away from your greatest expression through what you're creating, whether it be products or services, etc. And the other way that I see people, so I see a lot of superficial goal setting in order to survive, and then copying somebody else's strategy to make that happen. God, that is exhausting. I have done that. That's why. That's why I know I was on a mission to fill the hole between this gap between strategy, because there is some form of, I actually work with flexible frameworks. Because that's what works for me and others, because we do need some sort of system, something to move the energy through in this dimension. That is true, but it's not from survival. It's actually from overflow. If there's more than enough, if I'm fully resourced, that energy is where you're coming from. If this is such a popular, if this contribution is so popular, what am I continuing to create? And you can feel how you are organically in a momentum and not exhausting yourself by trying to be motivated about what you're doing. Motivation, mental motivation, and sitting right there as a resource in this overflow energy is this momentum to create with. And so the other thing that I want to mention that you can be aware of when these two things, so being distracted and or when you're in burnout or overwhelm. And I want to preface this as well as saying what I have also witnessed is that pattern often comes up when there is another level and like the next level of you or the next iteration of you, your business is tapping on your shoulders, and then you're paying it a little bit of attention because you're intuitive, right? You're going, oh yeah, oh yeah. And then you think, well, I'm pretty busy with what's actually on my plate at the moment. I'm not quite sure where we're going to pop that in, right? And so this experience of feeling overwhelmed or burnt out actually can get quite strong, or feel quite strong, or appear quite strong. The way you experience is it's like it's, oh my God, not one more thing, right? And it's in the, so the preface of this is it's quite often like the universe, it's a universal wedgie, right? Oh, look, there my bowl's going off when I put my hand. Oh, isn't that exciting? Oh, there it goes. It's one of my crystal tones bowls. There we go. Anyway, so this burnout and this overwhelm is a sign very often that you're actually in survival mode. And it's also an indicator of this not enough, too much, not enough, too much pendulum swing. So I'm talking about creating from overflow, where there's lots and lots and lots. And then we go, oh, but I don't have enough time, or I don't have enough resources, or I don't have enough staff or backup or support material people, or whatever it is, right? So again, here's this thing that then places us out of the combination, the dance of allowing both aspects to merge and support and grow each other. And we get into enough, not enough, too much, not enough, blah, blah, blah. And that is a sign of, overwhelm, or it sits in overwhelm. And again, it's part of the programming, because it means that we haven't actually paid enough attention to the intuitive hits at the bottom line, because you've dismissed them when you've got them, because you've jumped into the programming of that'll be too much, or that's not enough. You don't have the strategy, right? So you go from one to the other again. Whereas in fact, if you sit with your intuition in an advanced manner, and there are, many ways that you can actually feel the pathway, which is really where it's the energy that I work with, the pathway, which this dimension calls strategy, and I call it a pathway. And so when but this is I'm just giving you the signal, right? I'm giving you the signs so that you can start to be aware of and make a choice around, oh my God, do I want to experience another universal wedgie? Or is my overwhelm enough to tell me I'm putting too much emphasis on the strategy and the reliance and the dependence, got a codependent relationship with strategy, right? And not enough onto this spaciousness that actually is where all the resources exist. They don't exist in the strategy. The strategy is the pathway. The pathway is not that intuitive, expansive possibility. But what is the possibility that's actually waiting? No, that's not entirely true. The possibility there's actually yours. It's not waiting. You need to choose into it and from it, or you don't need to, but you can. Otherwise, you're going to get distracted or burned out or overwhelmed. And the choice is completely yours. I'm just giving you a couple of little tips and little hints so that you can choose differently. And again, one of the easiest and the starting point for that, going back to the beginning of the call, is okay, so where in my world is there a gap between intuition and strategy? More of my wording would be intuition and pathways. And am I in this reactive, not enough survival consciousness, or actually am I in this overflow, more than enough, fully resource consciousness? And when you're aware of that and not judging yourself and being in gratitude for your awareness that can carry you to greater and greater contribution, that is beyond perhaps even your wildest imaginations. So I hope that is a fantastic contribution to you. And I want you to remember that you are the possibility. And we'll see you next episode. Bye for now. The free workbook, Finding Your Missing Piece guide, has helped hundreds of people unlock their potential and create positive change in their lives. It's a free gift and available at the link on my website that's listed below. Find Your Missing Piece. Practical tools and exercises that bring the missing awareness around how you view yourself, your possibilities, your obstacles, and activating your receiving capacities.